Today, we're diving into the sociological interview. Now, this is a tool that goes way beyond just, talking to people. It's a way to map how people think, to really get at why they believe what they believe, and to understand the worlds they live in. But to really get a feel for its power and its pitfalls, we have to start with a story. A story of when everything went completely off the rails. And that really brings us to a huge question. What happens when the hunt for knowledge just ignores the rights and dignity of other human beings? The fallout from one particular case didn't just cause a scandal. It literally redefined the rulebook for an entire field of science. So let's dive into this. Our story starts back in the 1960s with a sociologist named Laud Humphreys and his now infamous study, the tea room trade. It's a case that became a total flashpoint for a crisis of conscience in sociology, and believe me, for very good reason. To try and understand this hidden world of impersonal encounters between men, Humphreys went undercover. He went into public restrooms, what he called tier rooms, and pretended to be a lookout or a watch queen to gain their trust. From that position, he could see everything that was going on, all without anyone knowing he was a researcher. But that was just the beginning of the ethical problems. Humphreys would then secretly follow these men back to their cars and jot down their license plate numbers. Get this. A year later, he used a contact he had in the police department to get their names and home addresses. This was just a huge, huge breach of privacy, using official channels for his secret project. And this is where the deception gets genuinely chilling. Humphreys completely changed his appearance, put on a suit, and just showed up at these men's front doors. He told them he was conducting a general social health survey. So he's interviewing them about their families, their jobs, their entire lives, all while knowing their most intimate secrets, and they had absolutely no idea who he really was. Now here's the wild part. Through these completely unethical methods, he actually came up with a groundbreaking finding. Humphreys discovered that only 14% of the men he studied identified as homosexual. The vast majority were married men, living what looked like totally conventional lives. He managed to shatter a really harmful stereotype, but the ethical cost was just astronomical. As you can imagine, the publication of the tea room trade sent absolute shockwaves through the sociological community. It forced this massive moment of reckoning. A huge debate erupted, and it made it painfully clear that there was an urgent need for a clear, formal set of rules to protect people. And so out of this whole mess came the American Sociological Association's very first code of ethics, established in 1970. And this wasn't just some abstract set of suggestions. It was created specifically to make sure a study like Humphreys could never, ever happen again. Okay, so this new code really boils down to 3 core ideas you just can't ignore. First, informed consent. It means people have to know what they're signing up for and agree to it freely. If Humphreys had followed just this one rule, his study would have been impossible. Second, confidentiality. You have to protect your subjects' identities. Using a police contact to get names and addresses, a massive violation. And third, avoid harm. A researcher's #1 job is to make sure participants aren't harmed, and that includes the very real harm of being exposed or having their lives ruined. So once those ethical guardrails were up, researchers could start refining the methods themselves. So how do modern sociologists do it right? Well, instead of deception, they rely on a whole toolkit of structured, thoughtful approaches, all designed to get rich, meaningful information with complete transparency. Today's interviews pretty much fall into 3 main categories. On one end, you have the structured interview. You can think of it like a survey someone reads out loud. It has a fixed script, which is great when you need to compare answers from a lot of different people. On the total opposite end, you've got unstructured interviews. These are much more like a natural conversation, perfect for really digging into sensitive topics where you have no idea what's going to come up. And right there in the middle is the most common kind, the semi-structured interview. This uses a flexible guide of topics, giving you the best of both worlds. Some consistency, but also the freedom to explore interesting things as they come up. This brings us to the million-dollar question, right? How do you actually build trust without lying? The answer is all about building rapport, showing respect, and this is key, adapting your style to the person you're actually talking to. And this is where things get really interesting from a strategy perspective. A one-size-fits-all approach to interviewing just does not work. You see, interviewing, say, a Fortune 500 CEO requires a completely different game plan than interviewing someone you've chosen at random from the phone book. The goals are different, so the methods have to be different too. Sociologist Jennifer Hochschild makes a brilliant distinction here. When you're doing intensive interviews with regular folks, your goal is what she calls conceptual mapping. You're trying to understand their entire worldview. But with elite interviews, you're talking to someone because of their specific, powerful position. The goal there is to get key information that only they have. One is about understanding a perspective, the other is about getting privileged information. So her point is just so crucial here. The power of these interviews is not in making broad, sweeping generalizations like you would with a survey. No, their power is in the depth. It's about figuring out how people frame their own views, why they connect certain ideas, and exploring all the rich, complex details that numbers alone can never, ever capture. So you've done all these interviews, you've got stacks and stacks of transcripts. Now what? Well, this is where the real science kicks in. Researchers have to somehow turn all those pages of conversation into clear, solid sociological findings. It's not just about pulling out a few good quotes. It's a systematic process of analysis. And there are two main ways they do this. Thematic analysis is kind of like sorting a giant pile of Legos by color and shape. You're just looking for patterns or themes that keep popping up over and over again in the interviews. Grounded theory, on the other hand, is way more ambitious. It's like using those Legos to build something totally new. The goal is to construct a brand new theory from the ground up based entirely on what you heard in those conversations.
So, when you look at the whole journey, from the absolute cautionary tale of the tea room trade to the sophisticated ethical methods we have today, you can see how much the sociological interview has evolved. It's an incredibly powerful tool, not for tricking people, but for genuinely understanding them.
And at the end of the day, this is why interviews are so vital. They can challenge or add incredible depth to what we think we know from a survey. They put a human face on the big institutions and policies that shape our world. But maybe most importantly, they get to the how and the why of our social lives in a way that no other method really can. And that leaves us with this one last really crucial question to think about. In our world, which is so dominated by algorithms and big data, where we can track what people are doing on a massive scale, what are the things we can only learn by sitting down with another person, looking them in the eye, and simply asking why?